Ladies and gentlemen, this is Joe's Classic Video Games back with another cool pinball repair video for you today. Now, if you didn't see part 1 of this video, go find it. Should be here on our channel somewhere. There may be a link to it up there or something or down there. Or look for it. And we are working on this F-14 Tomcat pinball machine that a customer brought us and they wanted us to repair. And we said, sure, the thing's a little bit rough. Once we got into it, it was halfway working. A lot of the lights weren't working. The solenoids weren't working. Half the displays aren't working. So once we got into it, we did the power supply. I did a video about that. We took out the main board, and it had all kinds of battery corrosion going on. So this entire area here was corroded from where the batteries had leaked alkaline. So in the previous video we removed all of the crap off of it that had been screwed up. We put vinegar on it, and now we are to the point where we're going to start repopulating it. So go watch that video if you didn't see it, but this is where we are now. So I'm going to start putting sockets back in, cleaning out solder out of holes, things like that, and figured I would let y'all check it out as we went through it. Do you think this thing will work again? Look at this. Look how ugly it is. Do you realize how many parts are missing here? This is the reset section. There's like 25 parts just right there. Are we going to be able to make it happen? Hopefully, if my focus holds on. So we'll see, folks. But the first thing that I'm going to do, so I'm going to, I don't know, maybe just start at one end and work that way. So let's start up here. I'm going to start putting all of these little pieces back in the reset section. Now you might say, how in the world are you even going to know what to put? Because the lettering is gone. See, a lot of them are no longer labeled. Right? Well, I'm going to look in the manual. So I'm going to go get a piece of the manual and see what each piece is supposed to be, and then go through and one by one start putting the stuff back in. And I guess that'll be first. So let me go print out that page of the manual where we've got a nice good legend of what we need, and we're just going to start putting them in one by one and hope we don't miss any of them. Okay, so this is the part that's going to be easier for me than it is for you. I went and got the manual online. You can go to the Internet Pinball Database, ipdb.org, and get manuals for about every machine. And you can buy them too, so you can buy copies of the manual. If you want an original one, you can get them on eBay, but if you want a copy, you can get it from the Pinball Resource. Is my favorite place to get stuff, pbresource.com. But in the manual, they list all of the parts. This is an 11A CPU board from an F-14 Tomcat. And so it lists every little piece, every little part. And then there's also a drawing in the map of the board that shows where every part is. So I have blown it up. It's not a great scan, but I've blown it up where I can tell what the original part was supposed to be. This was also in the cabinet, which is an original manual out of a Cyclone. Cyclone is a slightly different board, just a little bit. I think it's an 11B, but it has the same thing. Most of like the reset section and the stuff that we'll be messing with will be the same. So there is a little bit better quality drawing here, so I can see for sure what the numbers are. So the reason it's going to be easier for me than it will be for you is because since we work on this stuff all the time, I've got all of the little cheap parts. So like the little resistor, you know, if it's a 330 ohm resistor, I've got those just because I've used them on other things. And so I've actually got them on the shelf, just pull one out and put it in. They only cost 2 or 3 cents, so they're very cheap and inexpensive, but if you don't have them, you have to order them and pay shipping and all that. So what you're probably going to need to do if you're doing this your own is make a list of everything that's been removed from the board and then order it piece by piece, which is going to take a lot of time on Newark.com or whatever, but you can order all that stuff. So you can go to like Newark.com or DigiKey or whatever, Jamico, and order, my favorite's Newark, but, and order, like if you need one resistor, you can order just one resistor if you want, but I would suggest ordering a few just because they're 2 or 3 cents, and maybe the next time you need one, you won't have to order it. You can also order an assortment of resistors, just like a little case that has a whole bunch of different ones. Most of these are resistors that have been removed. There's a lot of capacitors too, and then there's a few IC chips that need to be replaced. The ICs are also very common. The ones that I removed, or I believe that most of them are. So there's like a 7404 or a 7402 and things like that, which is just common IC chips that I keep in stock. So I probably won't have to order much for it. Keep your fingers crossed. But if you're doing yours, that's going to be the biggest problem. So make yourself a list of everything you pulled off, and then you're just going to have to slowly go through. Now, the good thing is that like these resistors, a lot of them will be the exact same part. So you don't have to, if there's 30 parts, there may only be 10 different, resistors, and they use some of them over and over again. So I'm just going to start going through and putting them back in and working my way through the reset section. And as I go through, I'm going to cross off each one that I've replaced, just so that maybe I can find a highlighter or something. Just so when I'm done, I'll know that everything's been done. You might be wondering, what am I going to do about the batteries? Well, I've got NVRAM with replacement. Like there's a little, I'll show you later on. Later in the video, you'll see it. But there, you can take out the RAM. I think it's this one. You can take out the RAM chip and replace it with one that doesn't need a battery. So we're not going to put the batteries back on the board, so hopefully we won't have this same issue in the future. Okay, so I'm going to start replacing stuff, and if I run into anything interesting, I'll come back. Okay, folks, so we're about 2 hours into it. So I started replacing everything. Some of the diodes I didn't have, so I ordered those. Resistors all going in. They're all 1/4 watt, but a lot of them I put in were 1/2 watt. Putting the transistors back in. Resistor. Capacitor. Transistor, capacitor. Resistor, resistor, resistor. And then I ordered all of these transistors. I think you can use an MPS A14. You run into some of these that are, the stuff's a little obsolete. Like these, the original transistor that goes there, you can't buy new anymore. I've got the connector I can put on tomorrow. And then you run into this problem with the resistor packs. So they have these resistor networks. It's a bus. So the ground is where the dot is. And then it's this particular one, I believe, is 4.7K ohms resistance. One of these is 4.7K ohms resistance from the ground to that pin, and 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 the ground to that pin. And then this one, I believe, is 2.2K. From the ground to that pin, ground to that pin, ground to that pin. Okay, so these are resistor networks. But then on these System 11s, they had these weird things that were resistors and capacitor networks. So the resistors connect from here to here. And then there was a capacitor that connected from here to here. So there were these weird little packs that had capacitors built into them. Very strange. But you can get around it. On these, you can put a... we actually messed with this on the last F-14 board we did, if you watch that video. I hadn't even heard of it, but the guy that was fixing it for was telling us about it, and I had to research it for his and everything, and figured it out. Basically, they don't need the capacitor. So you can just hook up a resistor network and leave the pin out of the capacitor hole, because you can't get those resistor and capacitor networks anymore. There's something about the capacitors, are these capacitors or something? So they were added on the board, and the whole design of it was if they used those, they didn't have to have these in or something like that. But for whatever. So we'll have to do that whenever we get the parts in. They will be in. For me, I'll have to wait a day or two. But for you, you'll just have to wait. It'll be that quick. Okay. So we're just working through it, slowly putting it all back. And another thing, sometimes you can't get solder to stick to the pads if you, because as soon as you get them shiny, they start oxidizing again. Just not badly. I mean, it's not going to hurt anything, but so since the pads are not tinned, they don't hold solder quite as good. So what I've been doing is using very light sandpaper to get them nice and shiny right before I solder to them. So you want to get where you've got solder coming up through the bottom to make sure that you've got good coverage on the bottom and the top. Oh, I should show you the bottom, I guess. We've got a few still left. I had to order a few capacitors and a few diodes. So they're slowly going back in. It doesn't look like much, but I've done a lot of the hard stuff. The sockets won't be that big of a deal. Sockets don't bother me. So I'll wait and get some more stuff in, and I'll pick it back up tomorrow, but you'll pick it back up just like that. So I have installed sockets, and I put the chips in. Doesn't it all start to look so clean? It's getting there. And I put in the resistors that I had in stock. I had only one resistor pack that I actually needed. Now on the resistor packs, I'm not putting them in a socket just because I think they'd fall out kind of easy. And then also, you shouldn't ever have to replace those again. The only reason I'm having to replace them is because either they were the weird capacitor thing or they were rotted away because of all the battery damage, and we're no longer going to have batteries, so hopefully we won't have to worry about that. These are 6821s. These are used, though, and I'm not positive that they work. I think they do, but we'll have to test it whenever we put it in the machine. But I ordered all the parts that I needed for all the extra little stuff that's missing, right? And I got them in. So we're going to go through and put the last pieces on. So let's see what's up first. What is this? This says it is a MPS F-14, which you can use to replace these. So that's what I'm going to do first. So I'll clean those up and pop them in. Now the original part was looks like a 2N6427, which apparently you can replace with an MPS F-14. I believe I have that right. I'm going to go check just to make sure. But that's what we're doing there. So let's pop those in. Okay, got those all mounted in. Very nice. The difference between the parts, I looked it up. The originals were rated for 40 volts. These are functionally the same, but they're rated for 30 volts. So the reason I used them is because I saw someone mentioning, because the original parts they don't make anymore. I saw someone mentioning that some of the boards came from the factory with MPS F-14s on them. This is the lamp section. It runs on 18 volts. So the 30 should be enough with a little cushion there. And it looks like Williams came to the same decision at some point. So that's why we did that. Okay, so next up, a lot of these little, they're calling them bypass capacitors, right? A lot of those were rotted away. There should be one on each chip. So I ordered some of those. Let's see what we got here. I have a stash. Look at that. Look at that. Beautiful brand new capacitors. They are 0.01 microfarad 50 volt axials. So here we go. So I got to put about 10 of those back, I think. So I'll drop those in, and that'll get us one step closer. Okay, so I was able to get all of the bypass capacitors back in place. And there were two little capacitors here, all 0.01 microfarad. And then there was a resistor right here That was a 56 ohm resistor. Now, isn't that a weird one? But I was able to get some. I'll tell you what, it'll be a long time before I run out of 56 ohm resistors again. All right, so next up was ZR1, which is a little Zener diode. And the original was a 1N5996A, which is a 6.8 volt half watt diode. So we're going to replace it with a 1N4736, which is a 6.8 volt 1 watt diode. I just said diet. And it's not watt, it's amp. No, it's watt. What? What? Let me make sure. Have I got my nomenclature right? Yes, 1 watt. Wattage, people. Not amperage, wattage. 1 amp would be a lot, really. Okay. So I got those. So we'll put one of those suckers in there for ZR1. Now ZR2 is a 1N5990 3.9 volt 0.5 watt. We're going to replace that sucker with a 1N4730, which is a 3.9 volt Zener diode, but it is a 1 watt instead of a half watt. So it's an upgrade, people. Upgrading. Now, the only reason we're upgrading is because you can't buy the other ones anymore. And these are actually cheaper because they're the common ones. So I'll pop those two diodes in, and then that will finish our reset section. So hopefully the resets will all be resetting again. Okay, I also put a new connector on, right? All these are new. Blah, blah, blah. We got everything done with the exception of these resistor networks. So I talked about those before. Originally, the R means resistor, the C means capacitor. There was a resistor that connected from this dot to each one of these holes, and there was a capacitor that connected from this pin to each one of these holes. Okay? But they've figured out over the years that you don't need the capacitor. They don't make them like that anymore where they're in one package. So you just need a resistor network from this hole to each of these. But the problem is it's hard to find a 9-pin one. So you can get a 10-pin one and just don't connect that last resistor. So that's what we're going to do. Now each one of these, this is SRC 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 7. All of those are 4.7 k ohm. And they're bus resistor networks. So bus means, like I said, this is kind of ground. You know, I don't have the schematics here. It's either ground or 5, but let's say it's ground. You're going from ground to each pin, and there will be a 10K resistor, okay, tying them to ground. If it's not bust, it'll be 10K from like this pin to this pin, and 10K from this pin to this pin, and 10K from this pin to this pin, and this pin to this pin. It's like just loops. Okay. So these are bust resistors. So I'm going to install all those, and I'm going to make sure that the last pin is clipped so that it doesn't connect across the voltage in the ground. And then the only thing left on this board after that will be we need to put in the NVRAM. So we'll look at that. So they're going right in, and if you're going to hack it, you know, cut off a pin. Like cut off a healthy little chunk of it there so that there's no way it can touch. But you don't want to cut way up in here because you might damage this pin and its resistor that's inside there. We don't know what the inside of that exactly looks like. But I cut the pin off and didn't leave a little piece because I don't want it to even have any chance of touching the board where it shouldn't. Alright, well here we are. I have replaced everything on the board that was damaged by battery corrosion. We got it all back together finally. Took forever. The only thing I didn't put back was the battery holder. We're done with the battery holder. It's caused enough damage already. So we're going to put an NVRAM. So the whole purpose of the battery holder is because through this diode, it provides power, this B plus battery voltage, to this chip, which is a 6116 RAM chip. And the settings are saved in that. So they save the settings, the high scores, you know, all that stuff. The bookkeeping, so they can tell how many times people have played it, all that. So this has a standby voltage. So like the battery, if it's providing power to that one pin, just a little trickle of power, it will it won't forget its settings. Okay, but they make new stuff that doesn't need a battery and will not forget its settings. So you can buy these little adapters that you put in place of that chip, and then you don't need batteries anymore, and it still saves the settings and stuff. So unfortunately on this board, this isn't socketed, so we have to put a socket in, which means we have to unsolder, desolder, and take that out. And this little chip, we get ours from nvram.weebly.com. So it's a different, let's see if it's too much light. Oh, there you go. So it's a surface mount chip on a little adapter that the guy makes, and it does the job. So that's what we're putting in, and then no batteries ever again. So let me desolder that and put the socket in, and we'll see what it looks like. Okay, so that's the one I replaced. You want your solder to look like that, but that's out of the corrosion area, you know. So that's how it looks in a whenever you're able to do it the way you want to do it, right? And this is how it looks when everything's all screwed up and you're trying to solder to it. So, you know, if your solder ends up looking messy, don't feel bad. You can't always get it looking like that whenever everything's damaged. But it's looking pretty good. That's the NVRAM that I just replaced. So, just do the best you can. Now, I'm going to slide this in, and we're ready to try it in the game. Now, folks, if you saw the condition it was in whenever I started working on it. Now, remember, it was working, kind of. If you saw the condition it was in, and then I replaced all this crap on it at the same time, because I had to get all that corrosion off, it will be a miracle if this thing still works. Because I resoldered 40, 80, 120... probably 400 different protrusions through the board. All of those have to be making contact to the trace that they're supposed to make to, you know. So if it still works, it will be a miracle. So let's go make a miracle happen. What do you think? All right, so I mounted it back in. If you didn't see the previous video, this thing is all hacked up. They had extra wires soldered to the power supply and everything. So we did a video showing it how it was when we got it. We did one on the power supply. We did one taking everything off of the board. And now we've done one putting everything back on the board. So let's see if we can get it to boot again. Will it come alive? The displays may be worse, actually. I don't know. We'll have to do them too. But the thing is up and running again. And now we have all that yucky battery damage off of it. A lot more of the lights are working now too, and they're brighter. It's coming back, people! Whew! Whew, that was scary. It's coming back. Look, it's Christining itself. Let's turn the lights off so we can get the full effect. What do you think? Now remember, we're just getting started on it. But it's coming along nicely. It's getting there. What? What is that noise? Is that the motor? I think it might be that motor. What's the relay that turns on the motor? So it's coming along. It's getting there. So join us next time when we go a little further. We're slowly working through it, getting it a little bit more reliable. So hopefully now it will reliably boot. And we don't have to worry about the battery damage. And we don't have to worry about batteries because we put that NVRAM in there. Next time we'll have to mess with the displays, see if we can figure out what's going on with that. What is up with that? So we'll look into how to get them working. Because I kind of need that so I can see what it says in test menus and stuff so we can test all the lights and all of that stuff. So leave your comments below. Let us know what you think so far. Make sure to give us a thumbs up for taking the trouble to film it for you. Hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. This one took a little while because I had to order parts for it. But look at that. The little light show's already trying to impress us. Look at that. What a cool game. So I hope you enjoyed it as much as I have so far. But we still got quite a ways to go, people. We'd like to thank everybody that's been using our Amazon links. If you don't know about that, down below our videos, there is a link to Amazon. This freaking light show is awesome. I forgot about that. There's a link to Amazon, and if you click that before you buy something on Amazon, it gives us a tip for sending you there. So we appreciate everybody that's been doing that. And we also have a parts page on our website with some links to Amazon with some of the more popular things that we use in our repairs, things like that. And also some of our merchandise, like we've got t-shirts and mugs and stuff like that. So if you're interested in any of that stuff, go check that out on our website. It's lionsarcade.com. Click on parts up at the top. You can also click on games and see all the games that we have available for sale right now. This one will not be on there because we are just fixing this for a gentleman. This is not going to be for sale. But you can check out what we do have on our website. And then finally, if you haven't done it already, check out my brother Donnie. My brother Donnie is my real brother. And he and I, he has a channel called My Brother Donnie. And he and I lately have been working on an old dilapidated grocery store that we bought in this small town in the downtown area. It's this little tiny building. But at one point it was a grocery store, about 3,000 square feet. And we've been fixing it up and trying to... Whew! Man, that thing's scary. And now he's going to tell me he's going to kill me.
Here they come.
So check out My Brother Donnie. We are fixing up this old building. If you like watching us fix up these old pinball machines, you might like watching us fix up an old building. So go check that out. The link is down below. So we appreciate everybody hanging out with us tonight, and we'll see you on the next video.